Hi guys. Okay, so we've been down this road a million times, just a little different content this time. Just wanted to give you some tips on writing the essay. First of all, this is the outline for it, which means if you want to open this in Notability and write your essay right here on this outline, that's totally fine. If you want to have it printed for you and write it with pencil on the outline, that's fine. Or if you just want to have this next to you while you type up a draft on Google Docs, that's fine too. Just make sure that you're including all of these requirements in this outline. So let's start with the introductory paragraphs. Typical 5 paragraphs again. The introductory paragraph needs to start with a hook. Lots of people have been using quotes regarding slavery or anything about things that happened regarding slavery pre the Civil War, or anything about compromises or anything about acts of violence that occurred prior to the Civil War as their hooks. And then you'll move from that hook into your kind of the meat of your introductory paragraph. First of all, make sure that you connect how this hook has anything to do with what this essay is going to be speaking about. Also, you're going to start introducing, the concept of what time period we're talking about, the fact that there's just slavery and disagreements between the North and South with slavery in the United States at this time, and the fact that people are making these decisions and laws and compromises and these acts of violence are occurring in regards to slavery, as the North and South try to work this whole issue out. You'll then move into your thesis statement, and your thesis statement is your last sentence of the first paragraph. A couple people have had to make it into 2 sentences, and that's okay if you have to. But it's important to include the concept that, there is slavery and disagreements on slavery going on at this time. It's important in your thesis statement to mention the compromise you're going to be speaking about. If that's the Missouri Compromise, great. There are 3 compromise options, I believe, on Mr. Wilson and Miss Mack's content rubric. So make sure you say, what's the topic you're going to be talking about? What compromise topic? And what stance you're going to take on that topic. Whether that compromise was good enough, or whether that compromise you could think of it as was the right thing to do, or whether or not it was not enough, that compromise, whether the compromise you could argue it was not enough to get done what it was trying to get done. So those are that you need to make that stance or that claim very clear in your topic or in your thesis statement. Additionally, tell me what stance you're going to take on the topic of violence. For example, let's say you use Harper's Ferry. You need to mention that there were, violent situations like Harper's Ferry, and you need to say whether you thought that violent situation was too much violence, or were the results of that violence good enough, making the violence actually kind of worth it. So that's what I'm looking for in the thesis statement. Okay, now we get to body paragraph 1. This is simply, there's not too much argument in this paragraph. I want that to be clear. It's more of a background on the slavery and the differences that the North and the South had with each other. You kind of need to get that stage set before you can start arguing, whether you thought these laws and compromises and acts of violence were too much or not. So again, there's not too much argument here in this paragraph, which is why I simply have you coming up with a topic sentence that introduces this concept of slavery and that the North and South don't agree. And then difference 1, difference 2, and difference 3 between the North and the South. Most likely your differences are going to deal with economics, sectionalism, and slavery differences as far as like slave owners, abolitionists, and moderates. And then, of course, a conclusion where you just restate the main idea of slavery and the fact that the North and South have disagreements on this and relating it back to your thesis statement. For body paragraph 2, we get into more of an argument type of paragraph. This is the one where you introduce in your topic sentence the main idea, which is a compromise. Let's say the Missouri Compromise, and relate it back to your thesis statement, meaning that you're going to say whether it was this compromise the best option or just not enough to achieve the goal it was trying to achieve. So you'll start by explaining the topic. This should be several sentences. I mean, it could be 5 or 6 sentences. And then once you've explained what it was, for example, explained what the Missouri Compromise was, then you need to tell me, was this compromise the best option or not enough? And this is where the argument comes in right here. Finally, you're going to conclude by restating the main idea, like, for example, the Missouri Compromise, and make sure you relate it back to the thesis again, meaning saying your stance. Was it the best option or not enough? Don't forget this transition up here. Here you're transitioning and saying whether you're bringing it from the first body paragraph to the second. So you're going to bring up the concept of slaves with this transition and say, here was a compromise in relation to that slavery problem. Something else don't forget to do in this paragraph is to briefly mention the other side of the argument, but then come right, and you can do that probably right here, but then come right back and really hammer away at your own argument, giving good supports as to why your argument is the correct one. Body paragraph 3 is very similar to body paragraph 2, except you're using topics of violence. For example, you could use Harper's Ferry, transition from the last paragraph to this paragraph, and then bring up the new main idea, which is, for example, Harper's Ferry, and relate it to the thesis by saying, was this too much violence or was it a necessary step? Explain the topic in several sentences. Explain, this is the argument part right here. Was this violent situation of Harper's Ferry, for example, going too far? That should be an extra O. Or was it a necessary step? And then obviously a conclusion sentence like we did in body paragraph 2. Your conclusion paragraph, restate the thesis in a new way. That's the first thing you should do. Don't forget a conclusion transition like in conclusion. And then the so what. The so what is like, what does this matter? Now that you've argued, now that you've explained the slavery situation, you've argued the compromises, you've argued the violence, what does this matter? And what it matters is how it shaped the future, you could say. What effect did it have on future presidential decisions? What effect did it have on war? You could even lead into the Civil War with this right here. So again, just try to get this, rough draft completed. And we do have the rest of the week. I'll be in tomorrow, and we can, if you're finished with this, we can start editing. If you have a lot of questions, I'll be here to answer them tomorrow. Email me, though, if you have any immediate questions that need to be answered. Hope this helps.